So I had a couple of people ask me some questions about overall strategy for this year's game. First off, I do want to clarify that this is mainly pointed towards people on 6423, even though the video probably will be public. I had some people ask me some questions, my thoughts on week zero, all that stuff. So I thought I'd make a quick video just giving my own thoughts on week zero based on what I've seen and also the limited online discussion or I've seen or participated in regarding the competition. These are basically my thoughts and analysis from the competition alone. I haven't really watched like Robo Replay or Splatter. Or I haven't really gone in Chief Delphi and looked at the week zero thread. So it's mostly my thoughts. It is going to be a lot shallower because I am going to try and explain things a bit more simply. Now, for my team mainly, this is again pointed towards my team. So 6423, that's the main goal of this. If anyone who is somewhat interested in strategy but isn't interested in like a full in-depth analysis of like points per second, how to maximize that throughout a game, I'm just going to be going over what I think how strategy will evolve within the next 2 weeks before Finger Lakes, before Long Island, and what I think the goal is going to be for our own team. I think that during week zero, finals one was the match that I think what had the most interesting things to talk about. I will maybe mention things from other matches, but I think finals one is, in my opinion, the best match to analyze. There were things like auto. I don't think this is the best auto I've seen, especially relating to what our team is doing. But I do think that the auto was good enough to showcase. Like this entire match has things that are good enough for me to just use this entire match as the medium for whatever strategic discussion I want to provide. So, starting off with the match, or I guess starting off with some one of the main questions I've gotten is about climb. Climb over here at this tower. A lot of people were like, Ditty, how come we aren't doing climb? Why do you think climb isn't worth it? Climb was basically something that we were hoping to do at the very start of the season, but looking into it more, just seeing like not only like for this part, not only what other teams are saying, but my own thoughts on what I think climb will evolve to be at Finger Lakes, but mainly Long Island. I did not think that climb would be worth it. So I'll give a quick explanation of why I don't think climb is worth it, which was somewhat reinforced by what we saw at week zero. Obviously, it is week zero. It is a scrimmage event. This isn't contributing to anything. I mean, no one really cares that. Well, okay, that's a harsh way of putting it, but Mech Advantage winning week zero isn't like, oh my gosh, Mech Advantage is already qualified for Worlds. It's like, okay, Mech Advantage showed us generally what will probably work throughout the early stages of the competition season. So, anyways, the reason I don't think climb is worth it is first off, this is very obviously one of the main things we want to look at when we first look at different mechanisms and different scoring objectives. Is one, doing stuff like climb, like just complexity for our team, trying to mitigate overscope versus starting to go into that territory of overscoping, and then also how competitive our own events will be. Because for those of you on 6423, you might not realize that going to specific events is a strategic decision all in itself. Finger Lakes, I did a whole strategic analysis. I wouldn't say a whole because it wasn't like something super complex or complete. But Finger Lakes is definitely a harder regional than the Long Island regional. We are going to the Finger Lakes regional first. I don't think this is any different than us going to the Hudson Valley regional and that being harder than Long Island. I do think that Finger Lakes will be harder. I do think there's a lot of other good teams going to Finger Lakes that will be at Finger Lakes that have been at Finger Lakes in the past few years, like 3015, 340, 694, all of those teams being, regular New York State powerhouses being at that regional. So the main thing about climb is that I do not think that a lot of teams are going to be going for a climb. I could go on a whole tangent, which I have done before, about why I don't think climb is worth it. But basically, the way I see it is that in the past, when you do RPs, you want to get as close to soloing an RP as possible. When you have a climb like this, where the most points you can score from an L1 climb, which is obviously this is an L1 climb would be the simplest mechanically. where the easiest to integrate into a robot. When you are only getting half of the RP potential, and you also have to coordinate that throughout auto and endgame, I don't think that other teams will one. They'll realize that too. They don't think that it'll be a worthy endeavor during a match, so they will also not pursue climb during their build season. Or two, I don't think that there will be a lot of situations where you want that RP. You're going to make sacrifices during a match with fuel, with scoring, and then you will end up making some mistake like, oh, we really want to get this climb RP. Let's say Robot 1 has a level 2 climb. They did a flip climb. They did it level 2 because that's, I don't know, safer for them, I guess. But something like that. You climb you climb auto L1, you get 15 points. You do L2 in endgame, you get 20 points. And you're expecting maybe a robot to climb in auto and then another robot to climb endgame. If you are not, if you would rather focus on scoring fuel and you are better at that, you have a higher points per second from scoring fuel than you would have climbing, and something goes wrong in endgame, for example, let's say that. Something goes wrong in endgame, robot, one of your alliance members gets beached, they can't make it to the tower in time, you are going to lose a lot of that potential scoring that you could get. Especially from what we've seen in week 0, the first RP, the energized RP, getting 100 fuel in the hub is pretty easy to do. I would say it's entirely soloable for a majority of teams that have followed a pretty decent build season, a pretty decent start to competition season. They've driven before. They've done at least a bare minimum amount of practice during before going to the competitions. I do think that they will be. You'd rather score fuel. It's just you'd rather score fuel than go for a climb. I also think that because of that, there will be a lot less robots with climb, and therefore you will see the average RP. Especially, I will say at the Long Island Regional, I think the average RP could be at a 5. It could barely go above a 5, if not be just like maybe a maximum of 5 for the top team at the regional. I do think that there is potential for it to be maybe like 5.2, 5.4 up to there. I don't think you're going to get anything above a 5.5. I don't think the climb this year that you will see at the Long Island Regional, maybe the Finger Lakes Regional. I don't think that with the nature of this year's climb, you will see much people getting that traversal RP. So those are my thoughts on climb. I spent a while on that when I didn't really want to, but thoughts on climb. Anyways, going into week 0, I guess I'll just start the match and then just talk as it goes on. So starting off with auto, I already want to stop here and just say the auto pats were very interesting during this event. I think I saw a lot of cool things where people were trying to mitigate the fuel being knocked away, which is the big thing I want to talk about first. That's really loud. I don't know how to reduce that. Does this? Nope, that's up. There we go. So the first thing is that touching the fuel in the center is going to scatter it all over the neutral zone. You can see here, this robot drives into it pretty heavily, and it immediately just goes everywhere. The first thing I do want to mention is that scooping motion that they have. It's not just a straight line. They do go into the other, I guess, half of the field, the red half of the field during auto, which is a risk for if the other team decides to also go for the center. If that contact happens, that would be a foul. That would be points added to the opposing alliance's score. But I think that could be worth it for the amount of fuel you're saving.
Welcome
because
to the final.
I think that this robot up here, whatever number that is, I can't read it. 5962, I think. Nope, that's not. 4909. Is it? I don't know. Whatever robot is up there is right here. I did think sort of made it a little harder to see that fuel scatter better for the Blue Alliance, objectively better. But I do think that that's an important thing to note, and autos will sort of evolve around that fact. So throughout this, I guess I was going to say quick, but I don't think it's quick anymore after that amount of time I spent on climb. After this analysis of week 0, or throughout this analysis of week 0, I'm going to be using what I call fuel potential. This is what I've used for the past few days as basically the way I describe it is just the ability, the potential for the fuel to be intaken put on your side, or if it's already on your side, then just intaken, and then shot into the hub. So obviously, if there's a big chunk of fuel, that would be a lot easier to intake than going around and picking up like this ball, and then this piece of fuel, and then this piece of fuel. Picking up each individual piece of fuel would obviously be a lot less beneficial to your hopper capacity than just intaking a bunch of fuel at once. So the way I would describe it is obviously auto has not ended, but there is a lot of fuel potential here. There's a lot of fuel potential ending up here. And that is the main thing that I think will sort of evolve throughout the season or throughout the early stages of the season, where you are going to see fuel pile up against walls, against places where it makes sense to. I mean, given the nature of the game piece, it makes sense that the fuel will just roll wherever it wants to, get stopped by the wall of the hub, try to roll over the bump and fall back down, get stuck in the corner. I think that is a very important strategic thing to notice during a competition. So, going on from here, you will see there's a lot of fuel left here. Because of that alliance's scooping motion, I will watch this. Watch this geniusness right here. That's not, oops. This, can I do that? Can I not do that? There you go. So, because of that one alliance's scooping motion through here, where they basically did an arc, I mean, I'm drawing it really badly, but like something like that, but obviously better. Because of that, a lot of the fuel ends up right here. And that is a very good thing to do. Because you'll see later on in the auto,
official week 0
our robot will come
competition.
back.
Shots coming in over on both sides of the field.
And it'll go and intake the balls from there, the fuel from there. And you have a lot of fuel to intake from there just because of the nature of the game piece. So I think trying to create those situations where you are creating clusters of fuel to intake will be a good strategy to follow, especially during the early stages of the season. And I guess the lower ends of competition, like I'd say lower end regionals to mid tier regionals, competition wise, you will see that being a prominent strategy. So that does come back to be more of a strategic element, an intentional strategic element during teleop.
Red Alliance with the advantage as drivers take control.
Dictating where
Red Alliance with the lead.
So the next thing is that, again, given the nature of the game piece, you will see that teams find it easier to push the fuel rather than intake it and then shoot it to your side. So in past shooter years, we'd see like crescendo, there would be robots right next to the source on the opposite side of the field. They would intake a note, they'd lob it back to their own alliance side, and then that would be amped, that'd be scored, that'd be stored for an amplification cycle. So I don't think you're going to get that in this game when the game pieces are so easy to just be pushed around. You are going to have robots moving at high speed. This isn't like 2017 where everyone was tank drive. This is 2026 where basically everyone is running swerve if they are a competitive robot, and you will see fuel being pushed around a lot. I do want to say, like right here, this is an opposing alliance's robot. This is not the blue. This is not the red alliance robot. This is a blue alliance robot in this, I guess, tan or military green bumper cover. They're pushing the fuel.
Blue Alliance 36.
They're trying to intake it, but they end up pushing it towards the red zone,
advantage,
which is a really bad thing for them.
Fuel.
So we'll see in a second. I'll go back. I do want to talk about
breaking them
this
off,
and all that.
bringing them
But
right back to business.
For mechanical advantage, they have a drum shooter. They will have an easier time just absolutely unloading that hopper into their line. So, but I still think that pushing that fuel is going to be better, like we just saw there. I'll rewind slightly.
Phoenix breaking them off, bringing them right back to business.
Yeah, so 2342 is going to go to the side. They push all of that fuel over here. And you'll see here in this corner, I will especially mention this corner right here, because it's a corner, first of all. That is where your fuel is going to pile up the most. Any fuel that is like slightly going against this wall or slightly going against this wall will probably end up somewhere around here. Maybe not directly, like just like a pile in the corner, but it'll be generally this area will have a high fuel potential. because that's just how the game pieces work. Especially against this wall too. When you're feeding, when you're pushing, they'll be against this wall. I do want to mention this is something that I have seen other teams talk about. I did see it at a discussion at the start of the season. I did see people talk about this throughout the time. Through after week 0, they did say this. That is something I did look at. These sponsor panels here. These did not used to be here before. These were an addition for the season, and in the past in games like Crescendo, where you really are going to be like feeding into the corner next to your amp in between your subwoofer and your amp, where you'll get fuel stuck a lot. Your drive coach could look over this little wall right here, see any notes, and then be like, oh, there's a note stuck in this corner. Just go over there and take it, and then yeah, you'll be fine. Because of this, apparently a lot of teams are having trouble seeing fuel that's against this wall right here. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I do think our team has some solutions to basically mitigate whatever that will, whatever negatives that will have. We will try to mitigate that. We'll try to work around that, see what we're able to do. But I do think fuel on this side is going to be a bit harder to see. That's also another reason why this area is going to have higher fuel potential. It'll be easier to intake. Let's say you're right here. I think this angle is going to be a lot easier to see than like anything that's directly under you or like towards another drive station. So another reason, the corral and the human player. I think at the start of the season, I will admit, I did not think the human player would be that useful. Sorry to our own human player. But looking at week 0 and my own thoughts from before, I did think the human player would be useful in auto. But looking at week 0, I think the human player is what you could call a 4th robot on your alliance. So the reason I'm saying that is because when you push fuel into the corral, it goes to your human player, and your human player is also able to shoot it. And we'll get into defense in a few minutes, but your human player obviously is not going to be defended against. There is no way for a robot to be like to jump over the field and hit your human player. So I think that given that your human player, given that they have fuel, will have a high fuel potential. They will be able to take that fuel and score it pretty often if you have a good human player or a good set of human players. I mean, if you have someone that has practiced consistently, even like throughout competition season, I think that'll evolve to be a really good way to score fuel. I was going to count how many fuel the human player scored, but I cannot be bothered to do all that, so I didn't do that. But I do think that your human player will be an important part of your match. And so that brings me to the next part, the corral. So when we first did our strategic analysis the day of kickoff, we did not think the corral would be that useful. I did think it would be useful, but for the wrong reasons. I did think that there wouldn't be as many ground intake robots, which looking back in hindsight is kind of silly. I do think that, I mean, the kitbot comes with a ground intake. I don't think there's realistically going to be more than a single team without a ground intake, maybe. Like, that's just my thoughts, but I originally thought that pushing into the corral and having a non-ground intake, good hopper bot, take from the outpost station and shoot would be the useful strategy. That is not why the human player is useful this time. I think that given that you're pushing fuel into this corner, it'll end up in this corner. You will end up unintentionally, or I wouldn't say unintentionally. I guess like the intention is there. You're just like, it just happens to be an extra benefit. Inadvertently, maybe I don't really know what the best word to use would be in this situation, but you will. I guess I'll show it. I think
filling up the hub, sending all the fuel back down to the neutral zone, and now it's time for red. Sending the ball up there goes mechanical advantage. Riderbots grabbing some fuel of their own.
They go to intake for this one, which has a pretty high fuel potential.
Sending a volley up, there goes mechanical advantage. Riderbots grabbing some fuel of their own, trying to get into the game here, trying to bring the score back in favor of your Red Alliance. Minute and a half left in play. Red Alliance slightly down. Will mechanical advantage be able to bring them back in? Yes, it is. There they go. And now here comes.
In my opinion, I think trying to push, trying to plow, trying to feed into this corner is going to be a dominant strategy, at least at the start of the competition and for the lower ends of competition, lower ends of regionals, maybe district events. Like, I don't think you're going to go to First in Texas District Championship and see this strategy being used, because I think by then the game will have evolved a lot more. People will be aware of this. People will potentially do different strategies, break the game in some other way. Like, that'll end up happening. So that is why I think that corner of the field is going to be so useful. But keep in mind, I guess, even if a defense robot comes over and they're snatching your fuel, if they go to intake from that corner, they're still probably going to inadvertently push some of that fuel into the corral for your human player. So I do think this is going to be a very important strategical corner of the field, as silly as that may sound. So that is why I think that that corner is especially useful. One final thing is that defense is especially prevalent in this game. I don't know how much defense is in this match, but I do think if you are able to be in a corner or be, I don't know if it happens in this match, but Mechanical Advantage does see that being against this trench over here is a good position for them to shoot from, because they can't go under the trench. So they are basically, if there's defense being played, they're lodged against that. You are not disrupting their flow of shots in any major way if they are doing that. And then two, there's also a pin limit. So they're technically being pinned in that situation. You can only do that for 3 seconds before you're forced to move away, get a distance away, wait some time, however you want to end that pin count. So that means that your defense is limited. It's not going to be just being slammed by a robot over and over again. They have to move away on purpose unless they want to. They're fine with farming those penalty points, which, depending on the robot, depending on the quality of defense, might be worth it. I don't think it will be, but that is a potential thing. So I do think that this corner can also be used in the same way. I don't know if a non-turret bot will maybe see the same potential that 2877 is seeing here in that corner, but it is something useful to mention. So what else do I want to mention? The alliance shifts, they're surprisingly short. I do think that managing your being a drive coach, managing your driver, managing your driver while your driver manages the robot is going to be a very important part of this game. You don't want to be wasting any time. I do think that maybe for some teams it might be better to cycle on a clock. So maybe you go and you intake for 5 seconds. If you have a high fuel potential, you shoot for 7 seconds. You go back, intake, shoot for 7 seconds. I don't know how much that is. That's 24 seconds, right? That's 24 seconds. That is, you just did 2 cycles. That's the end of your shift. That's 25 seconds long. It's not that long at all. So I do think that that's going to be especially important. I do think that you're going to end up seeing sub teams, especially that maybe do not have like, I wouldn't say, I guess inaccurate wouldn't be the right word to use here, but for lack of a better term, inaccurate, or I guess a less efficient way of clearing out a hopper and getting that into your shooter. If maybe the first time it takes 6 seconds to do and the second time it takes 7.5 seconds to do, that is, I guess, inconsistent. I'd say inconsistent. Inconsistent times to complete actions in the cycle. I think that teams that'll have that will be finding themselves, I think in that scenario, I think it would be better to maybe go and just cycle on the clock. If you are up, your 7 seconds are up, you want to go intake, your drive coach wants you to intake from like maybe there's a corner with a lot of fuel potential. I think that'll end up being a good drive coaching strategy. That is what I think will be used in my drive coaching for our driver. I do think that is what's going to end up happening. It does depend on obviously your team, your robot, your driver, your drive coach to driver pipeline, all of that stuff. I do think that in our situation, that'll probably end up happening. Finally, I want to talk about the trench and the bump. So, at the start of the season, our mentor had a very important and a very good point where if you're a robot, if you're in the middle of a match and your robot can go in the trench, and it is arguably, I wouldn't say arguably, maybe it's more convenient for you to go under the trench in most scenarios. You're going under the trench every single match. Our mentor said that there's going to be some point during the competition where you're going to go over that bump and you're going to have to make that decision and you're going to want to be able to go over that bump. Regardless, I mean, obviously, if you can't go under the trench, you kind of have to go over the bump. That would be really awkward if you show up the comp and you're like, yeah, we can't go over the bump, but we also can't go over the trench. That'd be interesting. I think that maybe it could happen, but anyways, I think that was an important point to make. I do think that's especially applicable here. This is not the match where this happens, but I did see a robot get beached under the trench. Then at that point, if there's a robot beached under this blue trench right here, this is the example I'm using. Beached under this blue trench right here, going all the way around here while there's fuel, while there's other robots, you could have your entire alliance, the entire opposing alliance in there in this middle zone. That is going to cut a lot of time out. And if you see that this trench is blocked, you're able to go under the trench. You'll be like, okay, let's just go over the bump. I think that's an especially good call out that our mentor had, that you will want to go over the bump. And I think that especially you will see robots getting beached, you'll see them getting stuck, you'll see them being disabled, especially given how chaotic this game is, how insane defense can be. You can have a triple defense. Actually, is that against the rules? It might be two defense bots, and then three is like colluding to shut down gameplay. I forget the exact wording of the blue box, but you with how insane defense will be, you will see. I think you will see these obstacles on the field being shut down more often. You can see a ton of fuel here. We saw this at the start of the match. I'll go back and rewind to talk about beaching, but you want to go under the trench or go over the bump if you need to. I don't think there will be a situation where I'm going to tell my driver, where like, okay, going over the bump will be faster, but I'm still going to have you go in the trench. Going over the bump, obviously, in the implication that going over the bump is not riskier, as there's not a high chance of being beached. There's not like a defense spot waiting on the other side, just staring you down menacingly. But I do think that you will want to traverse an obstacle as needed during a match. And with how chaotic this match is, with your role switching every 25 seconds, you're going to want to make that call in a split second. You're like, okay, Mr. Driver Man, go over that bump. Mr. Driver Man, go under that trench. You're not going to be like, okay, let me analyze this situation. We really don't want to go over the bump because our robot is kind of fragile, but there's someone under the trench, so we're just going to go all the way around the field to that other trench. I don't think that is going to be an efficient way of going about things, especially with how cutthroat the cycles are, how cutthroat the shifts are, and how you want to maximize cycle time. I think if you are going back to your line zone with 5 seconds left on the clock, you are not going to make it to your alliance zone like full of fuel from the neutral zone if you need to pivot to going around the entire other side of the field in that time. So that's my thoughts on the obstacles. I think that you should just go over them whenever you can. Next,
the field.
Getting beached. I'll rewind to
racing back in the Shobo Robotics with more fuel coming up on their own. Red Alliance coming back.
See Mech Advantage shooting over here.
Over the place.
There's a lot of fuel over here. Like I said, fuel potential will end up being in this area, especially after auto or during auto. When you hit the fuel in the middle, they're going to scatter in both directions outwards, or most likely outwards. There will be, at the very least, some fuel that does go outwards. You're going to have fuel that ends up here. And then you're going to be shooting an auto, and then there's going to be a bunch of fuel here, and then the fuel that fall out from the hub and auto are not going to go that far. They're going to stay here. There's going to be increased fuel potential. But when you need to go over the bump,
drivers take control.
That leads to some
Alliance with the lead,
situations
45 to the Blue Alliance 36. Oh, tough break. Mechanical advantage.
And you can see both of these bots, I'm pretty sure. Oh, did I just fast forward? I didn't mean to do that. Both of these bots, I didn't. Stop it. Both of these bots are beached right here.
Partners.
2342.
Phoenix.
On beaches, mechanical advantage.
Bringing them right back to business.
Is still
Blue Alliance
I
absolutely
don't know what
stuffing that
2342
Blue
is doing. I don't
Alliance
know if
hub.
the drive coach for 6328 made that call. Like, hey, we'll unbeach them.
And
But
Nashoba
it
filling
doesn't
up the
matter
hub,
right now
sending
when
all the fuel back down to
they
the neutral
had a lot
zone.
of
And
fuel in this area right here. They had mechanical advantage were already pretty good on fuel, and it's also not even their shift. So I don't think it matters that much in this situation, but if you are having two robots beach when you are first shift, sorry, that is going to be really rough. So I do think that trying to avoid being beached is also going to be a very important decision that you would want to make in a match. Obviously, that goes without being said. You don't want to get stuck, but I think especially in this game, when, like I said before, shifts are going to be so cutthroat, you are going to want to avoid losing as much time as possible. You sorry, I feel like it's a bad way of putting it. You're going to want to avoid as much as possible losing cycle time. I think that's fine. That you understand what I mean. If not, um, I think that's mainly what I wanted to say. I think this year's going to be very interesting. Oh, I mean, I guess it's kind of late into the analysis to mention this, but I do think that those people who mentioned that there is a strategical discussion to be had if you want to win or lose auto. If say you had the ability to choose, maybe you'd throw auto on purpose so that you would get the first shift. I think very clearly from what we've seen during week 0, having that second shift is better because you want to stack as much fuel potential on your alliance zone. Or the way I've been using fuel potential is that the easier it is to intake. For example, if you have a bunch here, if you have a bunch in this corner, that's going to be higher fuel potential than having that same amount like bunched right here. So you would have a higher fuel potential. You want to get as much fuel potential as possible in that time that you're not scoring. And the final thing I want to close this out with is my own thoughts as a drive coach of what I think is the best way to formulate a match strategy for both your own drive coach, potentially your strategy lead if that is in your drive coach, if you have multiple people doing your match strategy, a strategy team doing your match strategy, like coordinating that during the day, or if also for your driver and also for your alliance partners. I do not think there's much benefit to having specific, like super specific match strategy. In my opinion, the simpler, obviously to a certain extent, the simpler your match strategy, the easier it is to follow through with. And I think that the easier it is to pivot if something goes wrong. That is just how I've approached things as drive coach and also as a former strategy lead for my team's drive coach and my driver when I was strategy lead and not drive coach. I just think that formulating a simpler strategy is going to be more effective. And that can apply any year, but I think that's going to be especially seen this year with the game so chaotic, so interdependent. That was my main thing to multiple members of my strategy and drive team. If whoever heard my earlier rant about week 0 like a day ago, is that the game is so interdependent that the more you complicate strategy, the more things will go wrong inevitably. I do not think you will have a perfect match. I think maybe in the past, maybe in RuneScape, you could argue that there are perfect matches. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I just think that the nature of the game pieces, the interdependentness of the hubs, the way the fuel goes into other zones, the idea of game theory and what your alliance will do compared to what the opposing alliance will do. I think all that combined will just limit your strategy capabilities if you are building a complex strategy. Like, in case this happens, in case there's a bunch of fuel on the other side, we're going to have a robot go over there with 5 seconds left in our shift or something like that. Obviously, that is a very exaggerated way of saying that there's going to be complicated match strategies. But in my opinion, keeping it simple is the easier way to do it. I think, like in my opinion, the way I'm seeing match strategy evolve and the way that I think during competition the best approach to match strategy will be is to be like, okay, this is what we want you to do. Like or obviously like it would be a discussion. I'm just giving other people a role as the purposes of this example, but just giving other teams roles is going to be the extent of your match strategy. I mean, obviously, there's going to be other nuances that you'd want to discuss, but I think the majority of your match strategy is going to come from what teams you want to be doing what. And then I think there's going to be like, okay, well, maybe in the queue line, you're like, okay, well, your alliance station is on this side, and my alliance station is on this side. So if you're on the left, I'm on the right. I'm going to be shooting from the right. You're going to be shooting from the left, and then the middle guy I know that kind of sucks for him, but I think you're not going to have that much specified strategy this year, especially like compared to last year. It's going to be even less, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. That's just how I think an approach to match strategy would be. But obviously, I can't say anything for sure without actually having experienced match strategy of the season yet. I am excited to see how like Robo Replay and people on Cheap Delphi do go into match strategy and see if I do have a nuanced opinion, if I do think I'm overlooking something in that regard. But in my opinion, that is how things will evolve. So I think that's all I have to say. That was a lot. I expected this to be like a 5 minute thing, not even five, like maybe 10 minutes. I don't think it's been 10 minutes. I think it's been a whole lot longer. But I do think that. Oh, I guess okay. This is also very late to say, but I think having your human player shoot an auto is more useful than well, depending on what auto you'll have, which does lead me to my own question of how I would want to examine autos. Maybe at a glance, maybe I will have autos pre-planned from the night before, something like that. But depending on the team, I think in the best case scenario, you would not want to intake from the outposts. You would not want to waste that fuel. I think that fuel potential is increased if it stays in the outpost for your human player, because they are now able to shoot whenever they want in auto. Obviously, given that this is an entirely auto situation, so given that their hub is active in auto, which unless there's some major field fault happens, I don't see how that would not happen. But I think that your human player having that fuel in that outpost to shoot while all three other robots, maybe two of them go to the center, like we saw before, where we had. Let me do my cool fancy thing again. I, okay, that's awkward. Where you had one robot go from this side up, and you had one robot go this side down, and then maybe this other robot can go here and shoot. Maybe it has no, a harder time doing auto. I think that is going to be a better way. You're going to get the most fuel potential, but obviously this is very situational. It goes match to match, robot to robot. So that's just my thoughts on the best auto would arguably be a situation where you aren't like limited by that. You aren't having to go to the outpost because that's only where you can intake from. Um, I think that's it. I don't. That was a lot. I think I covered like basically everything. I do want to say I am by no means perfect. I have been a strategy lead for a year. I've been interested in strategy for a year. I scouted a lot in Crescendo. I was interested in that. I became a strategy lead, and now I am a drive coach. I don't think that I have a perfect opinion. It's not like I've been drive coaching for like I've been the mentor drive coach of my team for 10 years, but I think that what I'm basically saying is that I do think I will have nuanced opinions. I will have. There's definitely things I will get wrong in this video. I guarantee I have nothing in here. There will be at least one thing that I will be completely wrong about later in the season. But these are my general thoughts. These are my general takeaways from week 0. This is again, if you got this far in the video, hopefully you understood by now. But this is mainly addressed towards my team 6423. This isn't like I'm posting this online for like the entire FRC community to learn strategy from. This is more like my team. Some people on my team are like they don't want to watch all week 0, and if they did watch it, they wouldn't completely understand the strategical implications of it or like the different things to learn and gain and see and things that went on during this event. So again, that is the main point of this video. It's not to like boost my opinion out there and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that 6423 drive coach Ditty guy, he's really good at strategy. So that's it. I don't know how long this is. I guess I'll see when I stop the recording, but I am a bit concerned that I went a little overboard when I wasn't expecting to. I am also very tired. I volunteered at an FLL event earlier today. Having to get 4 hours of sleep was not ideal, but that's it. I am very excited to drive coach this game. I think it'll be super interesting to see how things go during a match. I think it'll be really chaotic. I'm excited to see how many times I get a ball pelted directly into the Alliance Station glass and that being a jump scare. But I'm really excited. I think that this will be a fun season regardless of how competitive we are. So I'm excited to see how things go. And that's it. So thank you to the people on my team who watched this. And I guess thank you to anyone else who watched for some reason. I don't know why you would, because that was not the point. But thank you, I guess.